welcome to Lawyer of the Week. Lawyer of the Week is creating a global community of lawyers, solicitors, and their support to inform and to encourage each other.
Hi, my name is Pamela Deneuve. Thank you so much for joining us for the Lawyer of the Week. This week we have part 2 of Ken Grady's interview for Lawyer of the Week. Ken has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Crain's, The American Lawyer, Canadian Lawyer Magazine, Legal Futures, and other publications. I'm sure that you're going to enjoy the second half of Ken's interview. Yes, I really appreciate that. You know, I think a lot of the legal training is to be risk adverse and to immediately start with the problem instead of being optimistic. So that's really, entrenching.
And it's,
in
old
ways and not willing to change and look at new ideas.
You have to, to a certain extent, that's what a lawyer is supposed to do. We're supposed to look for, what are the bad things that could happen and help clients prevent those from happening. And so there is a bit of good in it. There's, it's not a bad thing. But yes, lawyers are on the whole, they're skeptics. They're trained to be skeptics, to not believe what they're told, to explore, to probe, to challenge it. We have very low resilience. If you talk to a salesperson, you'll find that, you say, well, but I was interested in blue, not red, and they'll come right back, but here's why red is the new blue. And if you say, but this, they'll come right back. So a salesperson is very resilient. You say no to them, but they'll just keep coming back with ways to try and solve the sale or solve the problem. You say no to a lawyer, that's it. They're done. They're leaving. It's over. They don't have this resilience. And that resilience is really important if you're trying to be innovative and to change, because you're going to fail X amount of the time. Right. So that's part of something that needs to be broken on training. Law schools are not very good at teaching you to be creative in thinking and to teach you how to empathize with the client and how from that empathy to figure out what's really the problem as opposed to the superficial problem. Lawyers want to jump to, you need a contract, but don't explore further where they may be able to say, we could actually do something else simpler here. So there are a lot of things built in along the way, but the result is, as a profession, we're sort of caught in this trap where we're not willing to break out and do things differently. And today that hurts us. 50 years ago, you could get by with it.
Yes. Okay, now, Ken, who would be a perfect referral for your practice methodologies? Well,
so you flip that around and you say, what could we do, or who's the right person? And what we're looking for, and for me as well as others, is this individual who is willing to say, okay, I get how we've done it for 150 years. Fine, that's great. It's been successful, wonderful. But I'm open to how can we, and I use this word hesitantly, but with full knowledge of what it means, radically reform how we do law. If we look at the world, we have over 4 billion people who lack adequate access to justice. In the United States, it's almost 100 million people. If we look at the court system, you'll find that there is a very high percentage of people who go into the courts, 50, 70%, who go in what's called pro se, without a lawyer. The person I'm looking for is the one who's going to come along and say, okay, we can't just tweak what we do in the law. We have to radically reinvent it. I've got a lot of ways that we can do that through methodologies, through technologies, through artificial intelligence. But we have to radically reinvent it so that law becomes something that on the one hand is very accessible to people who need it, but on the other hand can provide a living for those who are practicing it and providing those services. We can't unbalance the equation so that one gets everything and the other doesn't. That's the type of person we're trying to search for and get into law schools, to get into these different type of
Yeah, again, I hear the scientists, and because I believe everything is a science. And, you're talking about, just really looking at the entire methodology and revamping everything, from
Yes.
the bottom up in order, because it's broken.
Yeah.
And
And
I love what you're doing. I think I think over time, more and more people, I mean, they're going to have to listen, because the way it's all heading,
it,
if they don't make change, it's going to be a crash.
well, and what we're seeing is, and people sometimes confuse this with like radically changing the law. And we're not
Yeah,
talking about the law. It will have an impact on the law as we make it more accessible.
yeah,
But we're not talking about radically changing the law
right.
so much as how we do the law and what's happening. So, for individuals and for corporations, because they're not seeing the profession respond to their needs,
Yeah,
they're doing what you would expect them to do. They're finding ways to get things done without lawyers. They're
right.
finding ways to work around the profession. And the danger of that, the hidden danger that lurks out there is, while there are, like every profession, we have our flaws, we have a wealth of experience developed over hundreds of years
Yeah,
about how to put in place systems and how to use various tools to help societies function efficiently.
yes.
And if you strip that out,
Mhm.
pay no attention to that, or go to alternative approaches, you lose a lot of valuable information about how to do this.
Right.
Put in a very simplistic way, some technologists would like to simply take the law and turn it into computer code and say, now the computer can solve the problem.
Yeah,
And while you could do some of that, and there are ways you could introduce it, if you did it wholesale, our legal system would crash. Our society would sort of get stuck, because our system has to flex and it has to have some way of dealing with human foibles within the system. So the problem, the way we succinctly try and state this, is lawyers need to change what they're doing, or they'll simply become irrelevant. They won't be obsolete, but there will be fewer of them, and they will be irrelevant. They will be used for the tasks that are not important but are technical.
yeah.
And we're seeing that trend start to happen. So, now you hear many more voices in the legal industry talking about how we need to change and need to do something significant.
Right. Okay, that's really well said, Ken. So now, what legacy would you like to leave in the legal industry?
So the legacy I kind of focus on comes from my background in what's called lean thinking.
Mm.
And lean thinking, without going into great detail, was something that came out of Toyota. Um, so an idea for them was how to deal with manufacturing issues and challenges. And today it's used widely throughout the world. It's the most widely used improvement methodology for businesses of all stripes and types and sizes, including in the legal industry. One of the pillars of it is called respect for humanity. That's one of the two main pillars. The idea is simple. Many good ideas always are. The idea is, people are doing all these wonderful things for us. We should not disrespect them by making them do things that are wasteful, that aren't valued by clients, or that aren't valued in some other way, that take a lot of their time, that wear them down, that are mentally stressful, that are physically stressful. We should respect humanity by taking away that stuff and allowing the individual's creativity to help us improve through these different ways how we do things better. So what I'm trying to do is, through a whole group of methodologies, lean thinking, design thinking, agile project management, even using technologies, artificial intelligence, automation, bring that to lawyers and say, we're not respecting you today because we're asking you to do a lot of things that are, in short form, practicing below your license. You're doing things that we can either eliminate or do through other more efficient tools to free up your time to be what you have a high level of training to do, a very creative, problem-solving, hopefully empathetic individual. What I'd like the legacy be is that I help move us in that direction. I help create that, because when that happens, the access to justice problem is getting solved. The ability of people and corporations to get the type of things they need from the legal community is being solved.
And that way, everyone and everything benefits from that.
Hopefully it's, it improves and it takes us in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. Well, to kind of change the nature of our conversation to more of a personal conversation, what would you say one thing that you need to do, or that you do, to manage your stress levels?
So I worked in some fairly stressful positions: general counsel of large corporations, global corporations. I was for a while a manufacturing executive in a Fortune 500 corporation. Manufacturing has a very rhythm to it, a very high pace to it. So what I found for me worked well was this idea of lean thinking, because if you look at what all of us do, we have a lot of different things that we do. And at the end of the day, we like to feel we've accomplished things. So what we do is focus on the easy to accomplish, but not necessarily the meaningful to accomplish. And then we can check off a lot of things on our list. You can see people who love this. They have a to-do list, and they go, oh, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. I did 28 things today. Well, did those 28 things really move you or anyone else forward? Or did the 28 things include, I put away paper on my desk, which may have been necessary to do, but probably wasn't a big thing. Lean thinking has allowed me to look at things in a way that say, does this add value? Or is it just wasteful? It takes time and energy, etc. If it's wasteful, I want to eliminate it. I don't want to do it. It just burdens my day. If it adds value, I'll focus on that. And when you start doing that, it sort of gives your mind the freedom to say, I'm not going to do this because there's no value to it out there. And that takes some of the stress off of you thinking, I got to do all these things.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't, because there's no one's going to say, that was really great that you did it. There's no value to it, and it's gone. So I found that, it's a little geeky, it's a little nerdy to talk about lean thinking, but it's a helpful way of saying, do I really need to do this? Is this really value added? Or am I just doing stuff that puts a lot of pressure and time and pressure on me that they don't really need to be done? I can just let them go, and that eases the pressure. It also makes you, I think, feel mentally a bit more creative and engaged, because as you take waste away and you focus more on value-added things, that's the fun stuff. So now your mind is like, yeah, I really want to do this because it's interesting. I didn't want to do that because it was going to take me 3 hours of drudgery to do, and nobody was going to really care that I did it. So.
Well, that's great. It sounds like you're taking the lean strategy that you teach, and you're applying to your clients, and you actually apply that to your own life to reduce stress, as a like living by example.
And it happens, the lean thinking community, in one sense, there's sort of a small group that have been through lean thinking for a long time. I got trained in lean thinking in Japan by some of the people who helped create it. So I'm I go way back in this.
Sure.
But what happens when you do that, and many practitioners of lean recognize this, is it starts to become almost an irritant if you see or want to do things that aren't lean. So it just becomes sort of part of the way that you do things, and how you approach things and how you think about things.
Yes.
And as I say, it's a little bit geeky and it's a little bit nerdy, but it also, for anybody, starts to address that question. Of your long list today, what are the things that really need to be done? What are the things that don't really need to be done? How can you sort your day out? How can you take 2 hours of not really necessary work out of your day? How can you finish at 6 instead of 8 o'clock? How can you spend 1 hour on something that you were going to spend 5 hours on? And how can you make the time that you spend on things count? How can you make it that's really good time as opposed to just time in chair?
Wonderful.
So,
That's really great. Well, Ken, I really appreciate you being our Lawyer of the Week. It's very refreshing to see someone who's really, number one, practicing what you're preaching, and number two, really looking at the whole picture of the legal community and trying to make it better and trying to make it a better future for all lawyers, and leading the way to do that. So we really appreciate. Thank you so much for being the Lawyer of the Week.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining Lawyer of the Week. We hope to see you again next week.